This evening, we've got a brief presentation that I'll have Jared run through kind of the timeline of where we're at in the process, just for reminding everybody. And then we have, of course, the draft letter in your packets. It is a first draft. We're open, of course, to taking any feedback. If you have any edits you suggest, of course, if there is additional edits that you don't quite have ready yet, you feel free to send those to us in the next couple of days as we work on preparing a final version of this for hopefully presentation at your April 2nd meeting before the April 9th deadline for submitting EIS comments.
So last month, King County published the draft EIS for NERTS, which identifies the impact to the two sites. As part of the multi-pronged approach to opposing this project, staff has been preparing a response to the draft EIS with consultant support from Eco Northwest, and we have the director, Morgan Shook, on the line with us as well for additional comments and questions. Comments are due by April 9th, and tonight, Council is being asked to review and provide any needed changes to the city's comments or send any changes to staff within the next couple days before we need to include the final copy in Council's April 2nd agenda packet for final consideration. So just a brief look back on the timeline for where we're at here. So Council has previously authorized funds for an independent analysis of the potential impacts of the new recycling and transfer station in the West Valley area of the city. Since that time, staff and the consultant team have been taking a deep dive into that potential economic and traffic impacts that may result from the NERTS facility. Meanwhile, King County has finished the scoping process and published its draft environmental impact statement, or EIS process. This is a copy of it, just so everyone can see how crazy this is. These findings have helped shape the comment letter before you tonight and raise significant concerns with the Woodinville location. Following the April 9th cutoff, King County will respond to and summarize the comments they received from the draft EIS comment period in a final EIS that is scheduled to be issued later this fall. Towards the end of the year, the King County Solid Waste will take into account the results of the environmental review and then an equity impact report, socioeconomic impact assessment, and project cost information into account when selecting the location for the new recycling and transfer station. And then that will kick off a 3-year design and permitting process, followed by a 2-year construction window with the facility opening in 2029. So with that said, Morgan, Brandon, or myself are happy to answer any questions and write down any edits you have to the document in front of you. And if you see any additional changes over the next few days, please feel free to email them over. And that goes to anyone else as well. If you have any additional comments, please feel free to reach out.
Councilmember Best-Campbell.
So there's 9 pages of questions, just to give people a perspective of how many things are wrong with the EIS that we received. What I'm noticing reading through it is, just given the reception we got from Solid Waste Division at our at Woodinville High School, they're not interested in hearing what we have to say. So my concern is it's very wordy, and if we could shrink the words and add numbers, it's hard to argue with numbers. There's talk about the additional mileage, there's talk about mitigation efforts, but they're very light on details about how much they're willing to spend on mitigation efforts, how much it costs to buy land, how much it costs to mitigate at one site versus the other. They're vague references, they're not specific. So I think if we were to hit them with anything, it's basic facts with numbers. Numbers don't lie. People do, but numbers don't. And I think the letter at the beginning of this, it feels like it could read to 2 different people. I think it should read, because this is for EIS, we make it incredibly technical and precise, shorten the language and say, for the following reasons, Woodinville believes that the EIS is flawed. The following 9 pages are for your amusement, and send them all the information. The less language we have and the more work we make them to do, I think the better chances we have they're going to actually do the work that we're asking them to do. And I know that this EIS did not include anything economic related. There still should be a barb in there that they promised us. And if you don't have it in this EIS, then when is it coming? That does need to be something to consider, because there is considerable cost to Woodinville. And apropos of shortening the letter based on who it's to, I think we should consider a politician letter to the elected officials. They have very different points of contact that are going to be important, particularly both the climate action plan for the county and the RE+ program from Solid Waste. Both measure success of carbon reduction in tankers full of gas saved. And our site it increases the number of tankers of gas saved. So it's that sort of hypocrisy that I think is lost on Solid Waste, but perhaps not on the elected officials who crafted this. So I would be in favor of shortening the words, adding the numbers, and then perhaps doing a secondary letter, again, probably after we do the EIS would make sense. Just hit the numbers and just do some basic calculations and say, okay, disprove what we said then. If somehow 17 miles worth of gas looks different in terms of carbon emissions in your world, explain that to us. So that would be my 2 cents on that.
Those are really helpful comments. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councilmember Edwards.
Yeah, when reviewing the letter, I think you do make a lot of strong arguments, but I think I would echo that there needs to be a stronger abstract at the start and end. I mean, when this letter is going to go to people, we hope that they'd read everything thoroughly, but a lot of times you may read the first couple of pages, then the last paragraph. So making sure we make our impact up front, it makes them actually want to continue reading as well. Again, you have great arguments being made there, great questions being asked. I think we just need to strengthen it up front on the first few pages to make sure that impact is made right away. Thank you.
Councilmember Evans.
I also want to know where the teeth are. We're showing up with facts, but I want to know what teeth we're going to put behind this, because I don't believe that they really take us seriously, that we will fight this. I know that we have talked about this multiple times. I think that the residents and the business owners here in the city are rightly worried about what's going to happen when this decision is made. I agree that we should be reaching out separately with an influence campaign to the elected officials, because I think they're going to have a very different opinion about this, especially given what they voted for, what they stand behind. I think there are 100 reasons against putting it here, and I can't find any good reasons to put it here other than, you know, they feel like they can push us around. And so I want to know what teeth we're going to put behind this. Because as I read the letter, I was like, okay, this is a lot of great facts, but where is the influence and where is the strength?
Yeah, I agree. And I think council discussed, I think there's some wisdom in the idea of breaking this out and really targeting who the audiences are for these different communications, right? You've got this letter, which is it is specifically responding to the EIS, which is a very technical process, which is 9 of the 10 pages that we have here. And I think there is a lot of wisdom in breaking out kind of the political influence, I think was the term we talked about, the letter in a separate communication to them. Like, it will have some of these points, right? We're talking about the increased, in very succinct form, I think. The increased carbon is one example, right? And a number. And the increased cost of acquiring the property here as opposed to property already on.
And eminent domain. I mean, they're going to
right.
steal somebody's land and force 6 businesses out of business.
Right.
I think these are the sorts of things that we really need to make sure are raised, because we're not getting the press attention. We're not getting the elected attention. We need to start fighting back.
Yeah. And we've done previous versions of some of that letter with some of those talking points. I think the timing is right. We respond to the EIS. That's a technical process, but also to continue that political pressure process, which is a new and refreshed letter, I think.
Thank you. Yes, I agree.
Deputy Moreno.
One of the things that we did come up with, we wanted to make sure that they did an analysis of the economic impacts of this, and that's something that's missing from their impact statement, but we should definitely do a piece for ours unless it's already being handled by another entity. We just want to make sure that we restate or amplify that entity in our messaging.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That's one, for lack of a better way to describe it, that economic piece has kind of been minimized by the process. And I think including the big scary numbers that we've uncovered in our analysis of the economic impact in that letter to on the political pressure side is where that's really going to be impactful. Of course, if they put out this economic study that they've promised they're going to do that we've yet to see, we can submit comments to that, but that's going to go to a staff level, right, as opposed to the elected level. So I think including that among these points that we would put in the second letter is wise to do.
So a couple of points that I'd like to make so that people know that we are taking care of, we're fighting this battle on many fronts. We're fighting it on an economic, an environmental, a logistical, and even a legal. We pointed out that they have an ordinance that no one area will be overburdened with solid waste, and that we are doing our part for Little Woodinville for solid waste. they'd be violating their own ordinance. We didn't agree with the process. So that's the legal part of it. And yes, it's been mentioned earlier that there is a political part of it too, because in the end, the council are political animals, and they would have to eventually vote to eminent domain or purchase property, and that would be a council vote to do that. That would not be Pat McLaughlin's decision. So to that end, I personally reached out to several council members and talked to them about several of these issues that we just talked about. I have a meeting set up with Executive Director Constantine coming up to highlight some of our concerns. So we are, and I also had I started a petition to show that Woodinville community is not in support of having the transfer station here. So if you haven't seen it, there is a QR code that you can just go and scan and sign your name to in opposition, and I list some of the reasons for that. So we are actively pursuing many angles. I would like to see the carbon output that this would require more distinctly, because when you talk to some of the council members, sometimes when you're in person with somebody, you can get a good sense on what is resonating and what isn't through just body language or tone. And several of the council members have had concerns about the climate environmental impact, and particularly in relation to carbon, where you're moving away from the main population centers, and you're having more truck trips and well off 405 deep into our city, and then the trucks from the transfer station would then literally go past the site in Kirkland where it used to be on their way to Maple Grove. So that carbon number should be highlighted a big, bold, early, because I think that will definitely have an impact. So I'd like to see that highlighted a little better. Councilmember Best-Campbell.
For the letter, I don't know where we could put this in, but I think it's important to note that the siting advisory group did not put forward any sites for recommendation. They were so fed up with the process. Even the Houghton site, they said no. There was an immense revolt. I think that's important for King County Solid Waste to remember, that they can't hide behind the advisory group, which they've said historically. Also part of the process, and again, this might be something that we do on the political angle, there are 2 sites in Redmond that were not even included in analysis. This was brought up at the meeting at Lake Washington High School the previous week. These sites were not looked at. We had Wellington Elementary was looked at and excluded. Everything in Woodinville was looked at. 2 sites, Cadman and a site that's actually owned by King County, it's a gravel pit, were not included in the analysis. Now, a lot of Redmond sites were excluded because of an aquifer recovery area. These are not designated as that. So there are 2 sites. I have the parcel numbers. I could send it to you at a later date. But these were not included, and they weren't analyzed. I looked through the entire document. This is part of the problem of the process that the siting advisory group has had, is this piecemeal approach to selecting sites. And it feels like certain cities were excluded because of reasons we don't know. And it makes our faith in the process diminish. And I think this is probably more of a political point. It's hard to support politicians who don't support you. If we feel that there are other sites that the city or that the county owns, why not save $30 million on mitigation efforts if you've already got that site? But just going back to the EIS, I do think it's important that the public engagement, the siting advisory group, was wholeheartedly upset and not happy with the process from start to finish. And I think that King County Solid Waste needs to be reminded that these sites that they chose did not have any support from anyone in the community, including the Houghton site, which scored erroneously the highest of all of them, and Woodinville was the lowest, go figure. So I'll send you some of this information. How late can we send you data and information for inclusion in that April 2nd meeting?
We need it sooner than later. We've got to make edits to the letter and have it ready for your packets end of next week. So next couple days would be much appreciated.
And then
Monday at the latest.
Then one more thing, because we don't have anything else to do on the April 2nd meeting that we have. Kirkland will be getting their EIS response. If someone would be kind enough to watch that and record it in real time, maybe they'll cover it before we cover ours, and we could see what their perspective is and see how we can maybe amplify a message that they have that would help Houghton look like a better site and they get more mitigation, we could be helpful as well as not have it here. I think that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Councilmember Edwards.
Yeah, just what came to mind too, when we talked about multiple different letters based on audience, one thing to consider is letter based to the executive side, which like Constantine and solid waste, and then the legislative side. I think the legislative side will be especially important for education, especially since there's been turnover there over the past few months. The two districts, big 4 and 8, have new council members there. So making sure that they're up to speed with what's been happening there and building that relationship in terms of the impact they will have here, I think will be important. So even if there can't be two different letters, I mean, one way to separate it, again, is legislative versus executive if we want to do a political letter as well.
Any other comments? Seeing none, thank you.